to step down. But his role specifically as the U.S. Attorney in Manhattan is one, if not the most high-profile law jobs in the U.S. I'm going to talk about that with CNN's Sganim. She's been following this story all day for us. So, Sarah, when you look at all the attorneys the president could have, really made a statement with, this guy was pretty prominent.
He was also one of the most well-respected, most powerful U.S. attorneys in the country. Preet Bharara was appointed almost 8 years ago by President Barack Obama. He had been chief counsel to Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer. Schumer, as you now know, has emerged as one of the chief adversaries of Donald Trump. But back in 2009, it was Schumer who encouraged President Obama to appoint Bharara after one of his investigations led to the resignation of then Attorney General Alberto Gonzales. Bharara's office eventually prosecuted everything from terrorists like the attempted Times Square bomber to international Russian crime bosses to the hacking group Anonymous. But Bharara is perhaps best well known for going after corruption cases, notably Wall Street corruption. This Time magazine cover, you can see here from 2012, says it all. It says, this man is busting Wall Street. They called him the enforcer, and he was greatly feared on Wall Street. He prosecuted dozens of insider trading and securities fraud cases, including Bernie Madoff's brother. Of course, his corruption cases went beyond Wall Street, too. Bharara was appointed by a Democratic president, but he was well known for his nonpartisan investigations, going after both Dems and Republicans. And until today's firing, he was in the middle of investigations involving the offices of two of the most powerful Democrats in the state of New York. The first one, he was set to try several former aides of Governor Andrew Cuomo, who are accused of bribery and of bid rigging. He was also in the final stages of an investigation of New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio, looking at allegations of pay-to-play. Bharara headed a very important federal district. This is the Southern District of New York. This is where Trump Tower is. So any federal investigation, including wiretapping or anything else, would likely involve this office. And of course, Anna, we know that U.S. attorneys serve at the pleasure of the president. But in talking to people today, I have heard that this was quite a surprise to people in this office, especially because he was told, Bharara was told back in November by the president that he would keep his job. So hearing that he was going to be fired was a shock for that reason.
And not only does that play such a big role, his position in this particular U.S. Attorney's office, but the fact that he was told his job was safe, and then the turnabout here. Sarah Sganim, thank you. And just a short time ago, we did get a little bit more information as to why President Trump may have reneged on his promise to keep Bharara on. Now, a source close to the president telling my colleague Jake Tapper that Mr. Trump's promise was made as a gesture to Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer. Now, however, since all of this happened in the last few months, the White House has seen Schumer as leading unprecedented opposition. So joining me to discuss further, CNN political commentators Mike Shields and Ryan Lizza. Mike, to you first. You served as a chief of staff to Reince Priebus while Priebus led the RNC. By the way, Ryan Lizza is the Washington correspondent for The New Yorker. And Mike, I do want to start with this. Why would the president do this about face? Is there a strategy behind it?
Well, first of all, it's not just this particular U.S. attorney that's been asked to resign. I think it's important to understand that there are 46. When Bill Clinton came in, he immediately dismissed. He was the one who was told he was going to be, his job was safe. That's why we're focusing on him specifically. Right, and I understand he has a high media profile, and I fully expect him to be signing emails for Democrats for office and speaking at the DNC and sort of creating a partisan profile for himself. I mean, that's sort of what people do when they make this big a deal out of something. Look. The fact of the matter is there are Democrats that were appointed, and when you're appointed by a Democrat president, you can expect to be let go by the Republican president. When Eric Holder fired U.S. attorneys when Obama took over from President Bush, he was asked about it, and he said elections have consequences. And so you're seeing the consequence of the election here, and I think this is the first step by President Trump. I think he's going to start rooting out Obama appointees across the administration. This is just the first step. There's 46 U.S. attorneys here. This is a high-profile one. And so people are going to pay attention to it, but it's really just a part of a rooting out of Obama administration people, and that's exactly what he should be doing.
Ryan, is this just kind of standard procedure, or is Bharara a victim of political warfare?
You know, I have to agree with most of what was just said. You know, I think it's really important to distinguish when we're covering Trump with the episodes that really break with political norms, and there have been quite a few, and those that are frankly business as usual. And I think the warning that you were going to be fired as a U.S. attorney came on November 8th. And now, look, you have two mitigating factors here that are interesting. One, he did have this private conversation with President-elect Trump in Trump Tower and seems to have had some assurance that he could go out to the cameras and say he would be staying on. And it's probably worth finding out a little bit more about if he characterized that conversation correctly, and if so, why did Trump change his mind? Now remember, back then Trump was dealing with a lot of people, a lot of issues. I doubt he was all that up to speed on U.S. attorneys and what the tradition is about having them stay or not. But I have to say, I find it a little strange that a U.S. attorney would just outright say, no, I'm not going to resign. You have to fire me. And I feel like it's incumbent on Mr. Bharara here to explain why he hesitated, why he wouldn't resign. If there's something where he has some case that he should not have been fired, I think we deserve to know about it.
Mike, do you see it that way, that Bharara may have been grandstanding?
Absolutely. I mean, you don't get on the cover
I'm not
of Time
saying necessarily
magazine.
I'm not saying he's necessarily was grandstanding. Well, that's certainly a possibility. He looks like someone that could have a bright political future.
Well,
let's
put it this way: he has a media profile.
Yeah.
He has a high media profile. The guy tweets a lot. He's on the front cover of Time magazine. I don't think anyone even wants that particular U.S. attorney's job unless they want to be high profile. It's probably the most high profile U.S. attorney's position. And so the people that are going to seek that and rise up to it are people that want to do this. And so once he knew he's going to be let go, he's going to make the most out of it. And like I said, just don't be surprised if you see him signing emails for left-leaning groups or the DNC and that he's speaking at the convention for the Democrats. This is a partisan job. He was appointed by a partisan president. He's close to Chuck Schumer. A new president has come in, has gotten rid of him. He's going to put his own U.S. attorneys in there. And I think, in terms of the case matter, there's plenty of career people that are going to continue to investigate the things he was investigating. It's not as though this administration has sort of the friendliest relationship with Wall Street. It's a pretty populist bent that the administration has. So I think you're still going to see the work being done there. But President Trump ought to have his own Justice Department. He ought to have his own U.S. attorneys. He ought to have his own people in his administration. And so this guy's going to grandstand about it. But the fact of the matter is, this is pretty much a routine thing to do.
But Ryan, the way it happened so abruptly is not routine, right? I mean, we do know that a lot of past presidents have come in and they have cleaned house. And so that part was not necessarily unusual or surprising. It's the fact that he came in and said, "You're out today." Yeah,
it sounds like they could have given them a little bit more notice, and that there's some reporting that Attorney General Sessions did have a conference call with most of the attorneys, the U.S. attorneys, I think on Thursday, if I've got that correct, and this wasn't mentioned. So it was a bit of a surprise, and I don't know the history about how long you're given as a U.S. attorney to clear out your desk, and if this was shorter than the tradition, then fair enough. I think these folks have a good argument that perhaps they weren't treated with as much respect and with a longer deadline than they would have liked. But I don't want. I think it would be unfair to leave viewers with the impression that it's unusual for a president to pick his own U.S. attorneys. It's not, and I really think if Bharara has some reason that he would not tender his resignation, I think he should explain publicly what it was. Maybe there's a valid reason that none of us understand or are thinking of. And I feel like, hopefully we'll hear from him and explain why he didn't want to do this. Is there some sensitive investigation that he's overseeing that he had reason to make a claim that he should stay on longer?
It's interesting that you're saying that Bharara needs to come forward and provide more information, because we heard from David Gergen and others earlier who say it really is incumbent upon President Trump to come forward, or maybe not President Trump, but a member of his administration, perhaps the Attorney General, to explain why Bharara would be, fired after he was initially told that he would retain his job, Mike.
Well,
I don't disagree
like
with
I
that.
said,
I
Eric
think
Holder.
Both sides can explain. Yeah.
Like I said, when Eric Holder was asked about this in the Obama administration, his answer was elections have consequences. That's the response. That's the reason. And so, look, you don't hear any of the other 46 U.S. attorneys saying, oh, I've got an investigation too. I refuse to step down. And so, look, I think this is the first step. I think you're going to see more people that are Obama administration people being let go. I think if you're appointed by the Obama administration, you shouldn't be shocked that at any moment the clock is ticking. That you're going to get fired as soon as a new administration comes in. And I think anyone who's in Washington who works in politics knows that if you work in one administration, you could get let go. In fact, even within an administration, you work at the will of the President of the United States. And at any moment he decides he doesn't want you to be there appointed by him anymore, you can be let go. And so none of this is all completely routine. And I agree with Ryan. I think it'd be interesting to hear why he wants to, why he wouldn't just step down like the other 45 U.S. attorneys apparently have done. And see, and maybe he'll tweet about it, and we'll read about it in Time magazine.
Look, maybe it's as simple as, and maybe it's as simple as the fact that he had this guarantee from the president, and he wanted a deeper explanation of why he was being let go after that, and that's fair. If he really did have a guarantee from President-elect Trump, you can understand why he would be surprised.
Well, you guys both are sharing potential reasons for all of this happening.
We don't know.
Certainly are left with more questions than answers at the moment. Mike Shields and Ryan Lizza, thank you both for sharing your thoughts and the insight that you have. We appreciate it. Up next, the late night alarming security